I'm your host, Karen Dolan, coming to you live from Rochester, New York. Thanks for joining me today on the Paranormal Radio Network. And you can also hear us on UPRN 105.7 FM in New Orleans. For more information on the show and on my guests, visit my website at www.keyholepublishing.com. As always, I want to hear from you guys during the show. So if you're listening live tonight, be sure to join us on the message board and discuss the program and add your questions and comments. Go to paranormalradionetwork.com to join us in the virtual auditorium, and you can participate in the conversation through Teltalk. If you prefer, you can also email me anytime with your questions and comments. My address is kdolan@rochester.rr.com, or you can call into the show toll-free at 1-877-786-0562. And if you missed any of that, it's all on the webpage. Once again, that address is keyholepublishing.com. I am excited about the show tonight, I have to tell you guys. I have been wanting to do this interview for months, and we finally made it happen. Gosh, I hardly even know where to begin. I am just so into this. The History Channel has a series called Ancient Aliens, which I'm sure, like everybody listening to the show, has been watching and hanging on. This covers whether the pyramids were built by aliens, talk about the standing stones at Karnak, the pictographs on the Nazca Plains of Peru, the biblical book of Ezekiel. Does this or does this not describe contact with extraterrestrials? Are submerged stone walls found off the coast of Bimini all that remains of Atlantis? Are modern humans the result of genetic engineering? And who did that and why? This is all down to Georgios Tsolakis and the whole group that he's been working with, Eric Von Daniken. You have got a ridiculous number of really amazing and brilliant people that you're working with, Giorgio. Thank you so much for joining me tonight.
Oh, are you kidding me? Thank you very much for having me on the program.
I was telling you when we're just getting started, when we were just getting ready to do this show, this is one of my favorite TV programs ever. I mean, I had the best time this whole week. I was like, oops, got to get ready for the interview. I have to watch some more Ancient Aliens DVDs. Darn. How on earth did you get started with something like this? It's just the most amazing project.
Well, I mean, it all started with a show in 2008 that a production company for the Hill produced for Lucasfilm when the new Indiana Jones movie came out, Indiana Jones and the Temple and the Kingdom of the Crystal Skull. And, if we've all seen the new Indiana Jones movie, it dealt with the possibility whether or not extraterrestrial or the crystal skulls are of extraterrestrial origin. So in one act of that show, they explored that very possibility. And afterwards, they were saying, we'd be very interested in sort of catching up with Eric Von Daniken and Chariots of the Gods and whatever happened since, 40 years ago. And so we basically a 2-hour documentary called Ancient Aliens, and it turned out to be a huge success, and luckily, we were very fortunate that the History Channel decided to pick up a few more hours, and here we are today in Season 3, and I couldn't be any happier. So I'm very stoked about how all of this, turned out.
Well, so am I. I was really so excited when I heard that you got picked up for another season. This is fantastic. One of the things that really got me very excited about it, though, was just the fact that, here's a show for once that covers so many really fascinating topics, very mysterious topics, and you cover them seriously. And there isn't the little chuckle at the end and the little disclaimer saying, well, of course none of this is real. Of course all of this can be explained away, which we'd gotten used to seeing on every other TV program, it seemed. So how did you talk to somebody at a network like the History Channel, it's a very mainstream network, really? How did they go for the whole idea of a show that dealt with topics like this and didn't, undercut themselves at the end of it? I mean, you actually get to present these things seriously for a serious audience.
Yeah, I mean, And I'm really, you are pointing that out, because if you look at the very first episode that we did, which we today consider to be the quote-unquote pilot episode, today the show's title, which was the first Ancient Aliens, is called God's Chariots and Beyond. And to make a long story short, if you rewatch that show, you will see that there are actually quite a few quote-unquote skeptics on that program. You know, that one dude that says, well, if ancient aliens were here in the past, well, how come we can't find any skyscrapers from the past that are made of steel and glass? And you know, just ridiculous, absolutely downright stupid remarks that did make it on the air, no question. But now, as we progressed, and especially when the thing all of a sudden became a series, if you now tune into, for example, season 3, we have virtually no skeptics on board, or there actually are no skeptics on the show in season 3. We only have, you know, the quote-unquote bona fide, or the, you know, the ancient astronaut experts such as Georgios and von Daniken, Jason Martell, and Philip Coppens, and everyone else, you know, they're pretty much university professors that are giving their 2 cents on topics that we talk about, and that to me is absolutely fantastic, because I can tell you, being on the production team, that none of these professors have been approached with, you know, by saying, okay, we're producing the show in the History Channel, we don't know yet the title, we don't know what the show is about yet. No, we did not do this. We said, hi, this is the production team for Ancient Aliens on the History Channel, would you like to be in our program? And so the fact that these professors, out of their own volition, have chosen to be on a program called Ancient Aliens, I mean, they know what they're getting themselves into. That, to me, is an incredible, I don't want to call it victory, but it is a victory, because it means that these professors, they're thinking about something, that there is some validity, if not complete validity, to some of the theories that we have. And therein lies the huge difference, that this theory is gaining traction not only in the public, but also in the scientific community.
Do you think, though, I'm trying to figure out how to put into words all of the thoughts that were coming up while you were saying that. I think that's really fascinating that you've got experts, you've got scientists in so many different fields who are, they seem to be pretty excited about being on the show.
Absolutely. You know, and that is exactly the point, that the fact that because see, nobody held a gun to their heads, especially not the university people, saying, well, you have to appear in this program. That's not what has been going on. So the fact that they've chosen to appear on the program, to me, is a telltale sign that the times are changing, and they are changing for the better. And I'm very excited about all of this.
I think that's amazing. That is wonderful. Do you ever worry that with the third season, you know, not having any skeptics on board, are you concerned that some viewers might come on and say, well, you know, they only show one side of the story?
Well, you know what? After 50 years of having the skeptics barking at us, it's about time that there are no skeptics on the program, and I repeat, do not worry about that. And if any audience member says that, well, change the channel. Look at something else.
I am so
you know, because there's 50 years of programming that has skeptics on it, and you know, I have appeared on those programs. Eric von Daniken has appeared on those programs. My dear colleague Jason Martell has appeared on these programs, where you know, they tell you one thing to your face while you're filming this, and then the program finally airs, and it's completely the opposite of what you were promised, and it's you know, the lamb has turned into the lion, where certain producers, they smile you in the face and say, yeah, I know there's going to be something positive, and then the thing airs, and it's like, the knife has been stuck in your back completely. And so, no, I am not worried that there aren't any outrageous comments made by the skeptics on Season 3 nor Season 2 of Ancient Aliens. And you know what? That is 0 for us. So that is how it is. And I think it's just a reflection of the awakening that is happening all around us.
I think that's amazing that you've done this. And that just says to me that you must have really worked incredibly hard to get acceptance when the usual way of doing these things is, as you described, go ahead and get people like yourself and Jason Martell and all the other experts that you've had on Ancient Aliens to do an interview, get something on video, and then chop it up and make it appear like you guys are making outrageous claims that aren't backed up because they cut out the evidence that you do show. And on Ancient Aliens, you don't make wild claims. You show the facts, and then you draw conclusions from it. And it just comes out sounding like, well, of course. I mean, what other answer could there be? Well, and the only way that a skeptic could argue it is if they ignore half of the evidence that you presented.
Sure, and that happens all the time, and that is really, the whole point of this whole argument is that, of course there are no professors that are on the program now saying, yes, ancient alien theory is 100% correct. Of course there are not a single professor right now says that. What they're saying is that if it is true, then that would be an amazing thing for science in general. And it really is. Because, that means the extraterrestrials, whoever they are way closer than we think they are, and that, creation has been magnificent throughout the universe or throughout the galaxy. And also, the whole, question about that the skeptics are raising is that, the stuff that we present on Ancient Aliens, anyone can go out there and investigate or look at the things that we talk about by themselves. They can go out in the field and touch these things. They can measure it. They can photograph it. None of the stuff that we talk about has basically been, pulled out of our behinds here. All the stuff is steeped in reality. The texts are there. The objects and monuments are there. So none of these items that we talk about have been given to us, by beings from a higher plane and by channeling and stuff like that. So all of the stuff that we talk about, it's there, and people can go and look at them and read the text or the translations of the text for themselves. And then, of course, you make the interpretation. But to say that, that these things don't exist or that, they're far-fetched, not really, because what I think is far-fetched are some of the explanations that some of these ancient monuments were built with chicken bones and with using string. That, to me, is far-fetched. Nothing else.
Yeah. It's true. Some of the explanations put out by the skeptics require someone to be more gullible than thinking that ancient aliens actually did come and build the pyramids or Baalbek or... what amazes me, too, is when I'm watching this show, everyone's heard of the pyramids and everyone's heard of Atlantis. But your research team comes up with so many different sites and so many things that, I had never heard of. I can watch a 1-hour episode. I feel like I get a university education by the end of it. I feel like I have to have it on DVD because I have to watch it over and over and over because there's so much in there. I can't take it all in one time. And how do you find all of these? You've spent years working with Legendary Times magazine, so, do you draw some from that?
Right, of course. A lot of the content is definitely provided by the magazine, but also at the same time, there is a huge team of researchers that is behind Ancient Aliens, and what they do on a day-to-day basis is they basically, scour book after book, and I'm so very proud of that team, because when I walk into the Ancient Aliens office, it kind of looks like my house, because there's books all over the place, and maps and charts, and drawings and photographs of drawings and things like this of ancient objects or monuments, and different scrolls and or replicas of scrolls, of course. And to me, that is very interesting. That the average age of the research team, I mean, they're all in their mid-20s, and they're so incredibly excited and deeply invested or involved with this subject, and they all sit there with smiles, and it's like, dude, did you see this? Oh my God, that is so amazing, and did you know, and blah blah blah, and everything is fact checked, and everything is checked for accuracy and things like that. So I mean, but it is amazing, and of course, since I work on the show, and Eric von Daniken and Philip Coppens, I mean, we are the ones that provide guidance in what is definitely steeped in the ancient astronaut realm, and what stuff isn't, and things like that. So I mean, we try to keep an even keel here, and so far it's worked out fantastically.
It certainly has. You've got just an incredible product. And how many people are involved in this? I mean, you just mentioned 3 names, and then you mentioned you have a research team. I mean, production values. You've got some pretty amazing people working on this.
Yeah, no, there is at least 40 people to 50 people involved for the show right now. That includes the writers, the producers, the researchers, of course, and then you have the camera crews and stuff like that. So yeah, no, I mean, this is not some fly-by-night operation. I mean, this is we've not to say nothing, but this is the big time. We have hit the big time, absolutely. So this is all exciting,
It absolutely is.
And by the way, from the ancient alien office, the view is directly toward the Hollywood sign. So just to give you an idea, yes, very cool, absolutely.
Wow. Now, see, I was not far from Los Angeles just a week or so ago. I should have come in and seen you. That would have been really fun.
Oh yeah, you went to the MUFON conference, right?
Yes, yeah, in Irvine.
Interesting, yes.
Now, you're just talking about the number of people involved in this, and all I can think is, I mean, how much money must be involved? What kind of budget do you guys have, per episode? Because, I mean, not only the incredible camera crew, the researchers, the writers, there's a lot of really fantastic CGI that's done there to illustrate certain things as well. And I'd say that's another thing, is you guys don't fake anything, but you use graphics to recreate or to illustrate points that you can't just photograph, which I really like.
No, absolutely. I mean, it's definitely a crazy budget, and let's put it this way, that they're not sparing any expense, and in order to show something in the best visual way. So, I mean, they're really doing their utmost to deliver a wonderful product. And I always say that, if anyone, has quote-unquote problem with the idea of ancient aliens, I still say, look, man, just tune in, just watch it, because guess what? Just the way the episodes are shot, the way they're edited, and the visuals and the footage and the stills and everything that we provide, it's just beautifully shot. I mean, the shows themselves, they just look gorgeous. And, in the end, like I said, only von Daniken, me, Martel, and Coppens, we're the only 4 that say, well, this is how it was in the past, ancient aliens were here. But everyone else, they just raise the question, or the narration raises the question, and in the end, it's the audience's decision to agree or disagree, or even better, to come up with their own ideas or with their own explanations. Of course I'm going to say that, ancient aliens were here in the past because that's what I am personally convinced of. But if somebody disagrees with me, do I really care? Absolutely not. It's fine. Because the moment you get upset with people that they don't agree with you, that's just ridiculous, because then you start sounding dogmatic, like, idiot out there that sounds or says that you have to, subscribe to those ideas, and if you don't, you're an idiot. That's just crazy to even have such a stance,
That's another thing we've been getting from the skeptics long enough. People won't look at evidence. They just say, oh, that's crazy to think that there's life elsewhere in the universe. Oh, it's crazy to think they'd come here. They can't get here from there, wherever there may be. It's just crazy to say something like that without bothering to open a book or open your eyes. And that's a big thing that Ancient Aliens does. It opens people's eyes. It brings us all of the evidence right into people's living rooms and just puts it right there and said, okay, here. Here's what's out there. What do you think? Who do you think did that?
Right, exactly, and that is the idea that obviously I have no problem in saying or agreeing that our ancestors absolutely knew how, for example, how to cut stone, because we have examples all over the place. In every ancient culture, people, they learned and they were ingenious and they found out how to do things and so on and so forth. But, if I am looking at a block of limestone that's, a couple of 100 or 300 or 400 pounds or something like that, that's maybe the size of a chair or a small chest or something like that, then, I'm not really interested in that. Yes, okay, fine, they cut it, great, fantastic, move on. That's not what I'm talking about here. What I'm interested in, and the things that I shed light upon, are the giant stones made out of granite or andesite or diorite that weigh over 1,000 tons in some occasions.
And that's for anyone who missed that. You just said 1,000 tons, not pounds.
Yes.
Over 1,000 tons, one stone.
Yes.
Okay,
and
a
1,000 metric tons, nonetheless, too, as well, made out of granite and perfectly fitted into a structure so that you can't put a dollar bill in between, from one block to the next. So stuff that we today, I'm sorry, could not replicate, and do not listen to anyone who says, oh man, this can't be done. No, it cannot. It just cannot, because our cranes, they peter out at around, 1,300 tons, and, it's just ridiculous. So the bottom line is that is the stuff that I like to point out. That is the stuff that I like to shed light upon. And everything else, I'm not interested in. If there is an explanation for, how some ancient Greek temples were built, so be it, fine. But I'm not interested in those temples. I'm interested in the stuff that cannot be explained till this day, where, a couple of ropes and pulleys and a lever and chicken bones and string won't work. And this has nothing to do with human ingenuity, because if the ancient texts for certain of these monuments say specifically that this was done with the help of the quote-unquote gods, lowercase g, then, who the heck are we today to say that our ancestors were full of crap and they didn't know what they were writing down? That to me is the insult, and not that we say, hey, they might have had help. Of course all the ancient stuff was built by human beings, but like the ancient texts are saying, they were built with the assistance, or as I like to call it, with the technology of the gods.
We can't ignore the fact that the most ancient writings from all over the world all seem to mention beings coming from the sky. and they all mention these beings coming out of the sky and teaching us how to live, how to grow food, how to build things, how to smith metals and build different kinds of shelters and tools and how to use things, and then they went away and they all said they'd come back. How many different cultures say all of those same things? And how could that happen?
Yeah, no, and the answer to that question is in ancient times, it's pretty much every single culture, and it doesn't matter if the culture, because a lot of skeptics are saying, well, those ancient alien theorists, they only say that ancient aliens, they came to the quote-unquote primitive people of Africa and the primitive people of South America and things like that, and that is, complete and utter nonsense once again. The ancient astronaut theory proposes that every single culture is visited by extraterrestrials in the past, including cultures in Europe or in Scandinavia or in quote unquote Western countries. I mean, it's completely ridiculous to suggest that the aliens only came down in Africa and in South America. I mean, it's a completely false accusation and a false proposal, because if we look at the ancient Scandinavian or Norse myths of the Scandinavian regions, all those stories we have of Thor and Odin with his hammer and things like that. That's all steeped in ancient alien lore. That these stories, these mythologies came into being over time based on a complete misunderstanding that what our ancestors saw a long time ago was nothing else but flesh and blood extraterrestrials who visited Earth for whatever purpose, and our ancestors misinterpreted or misunderstood their technological, superiority by thinking that these guys had magical or spiritual or, divine powers, and they made them or turned them into gods or believed that they were gods, which they never were. They were people like you and me today, just infinitely more technologically advanced, and our ancestors, not because they were stupid. Of course our ancestors were not stupid. They were highly intelligent. They were as intelligent as we are today. But their technological frame of reference was way smaller than what we are familiar with today. And so it's all one giant misunderstanding, pretty much.
Exactly. Imagine what somebody from even 50 years ago now, I mean, we used to say, go back 100 years and what would they have thought of today's technology? What about someone from 50 years ago being shown an iPhone or an iPad? I mean, the things you can do with that today, they wouldn't have thought of at that time.
Yeah,
I'm not 50 years old, and I have trouble with some of the new things. I'm like, I see an iPad, and I'm like, holy crap, that's like magic. That thing is so
cool.
Is.
It's science fiction. I mean, it really is. And that is exactly the point that, and all of this can be, and our listeners can definitely look this up on the internet, on Google. You should Google cargo cult. And cargo cult is an ethnological term. I did not come up with this. None of my colleagues came up with this. It's an actual term that is used in university, and it pretty much, the definition of it is when a technologically, not intellectually, technologically, there's a huge difference between intellectual stuff and technological stuff. So the cargo cult the basic definition of a cargo cult is if a technologically primitive society comes in contact with a technologically advanced society, the technologically primitive society ultimately will start to worship the technologically advanced society. One of the most perfect examples that we have about this is during the Second World War, when the United States entered the Second World War, which was fairly late in the game. they had to set up bases in the South Pacific, especially in and around the area of what today is known as Kiribati and Vanuatu and all those places. And
because I am not good at geography. That's another thing I am learning so much by watching Ancient Aliens is I'm hearing about countries and places that I had never, ever heard of before. So when you say places like this and this and this, I don't know what you're talking about. I'm sorry.
Well, no. They're in the South. They're in the South Pacific. So it's in the area of west of Easter Island, about 2,000 miles, and so the Americans, they set up air bases there. I mean, obviously they came there first with their boats, and then they set up the airstrips. And then, of course, the war ended, and the Americans left as quickly as they arrived. And 10 years later, some anthropologists or ethnologists at universities here in the United States and also in France and Germany, they asked themselves the question, hey, whatever happened to those islanders that were visited by American soldiers in the 40s during the Second World War? So you know what, let's go check it out. We're going to pay them a visit. So they went there, and much to their incredible surprise, they found that on those airstrips that had been abandoned by the Americans, the natives had built planes made out of straw and wood. And every night they would sit around those planes and, quote-unquote, have these rituals. And, they would talk into little wooden boxes mimicking walkie-talkies and things like that. And the academics were like, what is happening? What are you doing? And they said, well, we are waiting for our gods to return. And they're like, well, who are your gods? And they're like, well, these otherworldly beings that descended from the sky. They're from a land or from a place called USA and things like that. So, right there, that is the definition of a cargo cult. And of course, while the Americans were on the island, at first the islanders were extremely afraid of what was going on, and then after a few weeks of eliminating their fear, they came out and started to interact with the soldiers, and so the Americans gave the islanders cans of corned beef and chewing gum and cookies and what have you, and so they became very friendly, and so they promised that they would return, and here we are. I mean, today, the natives of Vanuatu, of course, they know that, they were people that are from another continent, they were Americans and so on and so forth. But back in the day, they had no idea that they were visited by ordinary human beings. They thought they were visited by gods. And so you can Google cargo cult, but also the other thing that you can Google is John Frum cult. And that's John, like you would spell John, and then F-R-U-M. And the reason why it's called the John Frum cult is because on some of these islands today, there are people that still have tattoos on their shoulders that spell out USA, and they think still today that we are their quote-unquote gods. And the reason why it's called the John Frum cult is because John is one of the most used first names there is, and every time that someone goes out to introduce themselves, like you say, "Hi, I'm Karen from Rochester. Hi, I'm John from Idaho. Hi, I'm John from New York," and so on and so forth. So that is how the John Frum cult was created or came into existence, which still today is practiced, but the only thing is that it has, over the years, been turned into Christianity. So some Christian missionaries went there to avert or turn this whole thing into a Jesus thing and not into an American soldiers thing. So it's all very interesting.
That is fascinating. I had not heard of the John Frum cult. That's brilliant. It's just
yes.
funny. And it makes perfect sense. That's how human minds work. You know, you hear something over and over and over, and you think, oh, okay, got it. You know, you brought up the point about the cargo cults making copies of things they had seen. And, of course, obviously they were not as well built. You know, they were building wooden planes that didn't fly. They looked like planes. And you know what struck me was it sounded like the pyramids, oldest pyramids, or some of the older ones, are the better built ones. The later ones seem to be flimsier. And I'd always wondered if it was like a later civilization that was trying to copy something they saw someone else build, but they didn't quite know how to do it right.
Right. No, that is absolutely correct, and that is, you know, it's so very fascinating that the further you go back in time, the more perfect some of these stone structures are, and anything that followed later, you know, they in most cases smaller stones are used, and it's simply not as perfect, and that is a complete. It's a complete contradiction of in the evolution of technology, because it would be the same analogy as if, you know, the first car that Henry Ford built would have been the Ford Taurus instead of the Model T. Now, we all know that is not the case. Obviously, the Model T was, you know, the first car that went off the conveyor belt, and Ford Taurus is the model that we can, you know, buy today. So, if you apply that to the ancient world, well, you know, if you think that the Great Pyramid of Giza is your Model T, then that's your choice. I mean, it obviously not. But if you want to believe that, and I'm not referring to you, Karen, but, you know, to the skeptics, obviously, if they want to believe that, right there, the argument is over. There's nothing you can do. That's where you just don't engage them even, because you're not going to find any common ground. And so, you know, I mean, it's everyone's choice. If they want to believe that a 1,200-ton stone was moved with levers and string and cut with chicken bones and a decrepit copper tool, go ahead. It's fine. You think that that's possible, you know, continue living in your own little brain, and, you know, that's fine. I don't care. If you cannot see that, that is your problem and not mine.
You know, it's funny, in other fields of UFO research, evidence is often rejected because someone will say, oh, I could copy that. I could create that photo using Photoshop. So therefore, the one you're holding can't be real because I could make a fake. And in this case, it's totally opposite. People are still saying, well, that can't possibly be real, even though this is something that we can't do now. I remember in at least one episode, you said these stones that we're looking at in this ancient structure, we can tell how big they are and how heavy they are, and today we would not be able to move them. I mean, we still don't have the equipment, especially on sand. We couldn't do this.
Well, no, and here is the other argument that absolutely, you know, boggles my mind, is that, you know, one of the episodes that is coming up, we're going to talk about the Easter Island heads, and the mainstream community or science community, of course, has the idea or maintains the idea that there are absolutely no mysteries on Easter Island, and of course we know how they moved the stones and how they erected the stone heads, the moais, and the Easter Island statues, and you know, why even bother looking at these things? And then in the next sentence they always refer to the fact that there are multiple universities and multiple researchers who have actually demonstrated how some of these stones, these giant, these heads, have been pulled over the terrain, over the region, and then they have been erected and put into place. And, you know, yeah, absolutely. That, you just can go on YouTube and you can check out the documentation or the documentaries. in which Easter Island's heads have been moved and erected and put into place. Okay, fine. But what nobody ever says is the fact that whatever they move around, whatever they erect and put into place, is only a small percentage of the true actual size of some of these stone heads. The real stone heads are as tall as 34 feet. And here we are, and we're moving around stone heads that are 3 to 4 feet tall. That, in my opinion, is not valid science. I'm sorry.
No.
And anyone who thinks it is, well, they need to have their head examined.
That's amazing. And there you go. That's another case of the skeptics only being able to make their argument if they deny half the evidence. Any kid can build a skyscraper out of Legos.
Yeah,
now,
there you go.
Do it with steel and glass. Then show me.
And so, which would mean that any kid that can build a skyscraper out of Legos, that kid is qualified to build the next tallest building in the world. I mean, that is what it comes down to. And it's crazy. And sometimes I actually wish that kids would be given that chance, because they have a way more, a bigger sense for beauty than some of the engineers and architects of today that are grown-ups. So it would be sweet if some kids could design some of these new buildings that are, being built right now.
Well, I think the next generation is coming up with a pretty good grounding. They're kind of breaking out of a lot of the older ideas. I mean, you were just saying earlier, I'll repeat this for the benefit of a lot more listeners who are just joining us. I'm seeing the chat room is still filling up. Like in the last 20 minutes, we've had a lot of people join us. And you were talking earlier, Giorgio, about the team that works on the TV show Ancient Aliens with you, and how your research team is almost all composed of people in their mid-20s. I mean, there you go. There's, some younger people coming in who are all open to this. None of them are saying, oh, well, nobody could have done that. They're finding all these cases, and they're really excited about it, and they're pulling up the evidence to illustrate and to bring these stories to the rest of us. And I think that's really exciting. That really gives me hope for the next generation.
Well, I really think that, the next generation, I'm always, I always consider the glass to be half full instead of half empty. Mm-hmm. But the laziness of today's youth, I'm sorry, and I consider myself a youth as well. I mean, I still think I'm fairly in the younger generation here. But when I refer to some kids, when in their teens, I mean, and you can just see this on Twitter or on Facebook and things like that. I mean, the laziness that is displayed is unbelievable. I mean, it's truly mind-boggling how, if you would just, put in about 20 minutes to read previous tweets where I explained the question, but nobody, and of course, mind you, please, I am overgeneralizing. I'm not saying that this is the case with everyone, because I know from the bottom of my heart that it is not, obviously. Mm-hmm. But by and large, it's like, people have just become so lazy, and instead of, going to read a little bit, they just ask the same question over and over again, and then you don't answer, and then they get all pissy and upset, and it's kind of sad, really. I mean, we have become I mean, again, like I said, I look at the glass always half full instead of half empty, but we've become a nation of people that think we're entitled to things, that we can just sit on our couch all day, and we're supposed to, everything is supposed to fall into our laps. And you know what? That's not really what life is, and you'll never to anything or anyone if you just sit on your fat ass all day and complain. I mean, the way to do stuff is if you go out there, you grab life by its horns, and you just wrestle with it, and you make things happen. Things only happen out of action, not of inaction. And so, so yes, I do have, and so there are instances where I'm like, yeah, this is all going great, but in some instance, it's like, it's mind-boggling, especially what you can see in the social world of social media.
Wow, I was not expecting that. That, that is so cool, though. While you're talking, I'm thinking, of course, that's how a show like Ancient Aliens happens. That's why there's so much footage of you all over the world in front of these stone structures or in front of these phenomenal things that you're telling us about. And I have to tell you that, I'm perfectly happy sitting at home watching TV until I see something like this, and then I'm like, I want to go there. I want to go see that. I want to go look into this. I want to get hold of that author's book and read about his research, and I want to find out more about this. So there's another way that this show that you're working really puts a lot of your personal philosophy out into it. You feel like people should get up off their couch and take an interest in the world and do something about it. Well, this work really helps to get people to do it. I don't think we've had time yet to see the results of a lot of people actually getting off their couch and starting, but I'm willing to bet that there are people who've done it because of this.
Right, no, but I mean, yes, and I agree with you, but I was mainly referring to your earlier comment, saying how you think that the younger generation, they show promise. And I agree with that, but there are certain avenues where I'm actually doubting that, like, looking at what happens on Twitter or on Facebook, where so many people, don't pay any attention or just don't care anymore to even spell correctly. Now that to me, and then you referred as a grammar Nazi, and you're referred to as whatever. And the bottom line is that, it's just make a freaking effort. It's not that hard. Facebook and Twitter has a spell check. It's automatic. If it's underlined in red, there's a problem right there. So for me to know that people are deliberately, or maybe not even deliberately, which is even worse, that they're ignoring that to me, it's like it does not compute in my head. It simply does not. And and that's, I guess, what I'm getting at, that so many people just don't care anymore. And that to me is highly disconcerting. And that is why I'm always so stoked when people, do write me and say how excited they are about Ancient Aliens. Yes, or that they're going. I know a couple of kids that next summer they're traveling to Peru and to Bolivia to check out the Nazca lines, and they will go to Pumapunku and things like that. Now that to me, that is just a very, very a sweet feeling when I receive messages like that, for example.
Now, are you going to start doing tours?
It'll happen eventually, yes. At the moment, my module is so filled up that I cannot be, even if I wanted to, I cannot be pried away.
I'm just suddenly imagining, like you and some of the other people working on the show with you leading tour groups to some of the places that have been featured on the show. That would be amazing.
Yes, no, I will be, and we're definitely in talks about doing that for sure. Wow.
Oh my gosh, keep me posted, because I'll eat rice and beans for 5 years if I have to do that. That would be phenomenal. Georgia, we have a ton of questions on the chat room, and I want to thank all our listeners who are putting your questions up on the chat room, and I apologize I haven't relayed any to Georgio just yet because, I kind of wanted to see where the conversation was going. I wanted to allow Georgio to finish his point. It started when we were talking about the cargo cults. And then it started to seem like, we're getting pretty close to having to go to break. I am making a note of all these questions and comments. You guys are brilliant. We're coming up with some really terrific questions. And I do want to spend some time in the second hour of the show going through these. before we go to break, I would like to start, with a couple of these. There was the first question that came up was in Season 2 had stated in one episode that there are good and bad ETs. And one of our listeners wanted to know whether you feel that those are the same race, that there are good guys and bad guys, like there are good humans and bad humans, or do you feel we're being visited by more than one type of alien?
That is a very interesting question, and I definitely think that we are being visited by multiple species of aliens. It's not just one, and whether or not there are, or the question if I think that there are good and bad ETs within one species or within one race, the answer is yes, because we can even, read about such stories in the Old Testament, for example, where, the fallen angels are just an idea or just a misinterpretation of a mutiny that happened on some type of a spaceship a long time ago, where a faction of aliens pretty much they were not happy with their commander, and they created a mutiny and they were cast out from the crew, and the fallen angels. I mean, this has nothing to do with the devil. It has nothing to do with Satan. It has nothing to do with demons. It has nothing to do with God. See, this is where the whole ancient alien theory tries to describe or give an explanation for those things, and some people still ask me, so weren't the extraterrestrials demons? And I'm like, no, they were not. Demons do not exist. And neither do gods. See, that's the whole thing. It's one big misunderstanding.
But I've heard a lot of people say that about aliens. That aliens don't exist. They're all demons.
Yeah,
and,
well...
what strikes me is, why do we have this concept that demons, the older version of demons, the older idea, like when I was a kid, going to church, I had this concept that demons were scaly and had tails and were like reptiles. And then when I got older, I started to hear about reptilian aliens, and I thought, maybe they kind of got misinterpreted or crossed over or something. I don't know. Or for all I know, the reptilians wanted to scare people and said they were demons. Or it was like Ezekiel, you see a spaceship, and how do you describe it when a chariot is the most advanced piece of technology you've ever seen? How do you describe something you've never seen?
Exactly, and that's when you do the whole thing with the wheel within a wheel thing, and yeah.
Yeah, so that's a lot of what we're dealing with in terms, that's a lot of why people are able to say, well, the ancients weren't really very smart because they didn't describe iPads and iPhones. Well, yeah, they didn't.
Well, they didn't have the vocabulary for it. That
exactly.
Is the thing.
That's 10 years ago, I wouldn't know how to describe an iPad.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, come on, I couldn't imagine some of the things these things are doing right now. Giorgio, we have blown through an hour, and we need to take a break for a few minutes. I don't want to stop because I am just having the best time, and I can't remember the last time I saw so many people in the chat room, so we're just having a blast. When we come back after break, I would really like to get into some more of the listener questions, because as I said, they're bringing up great topics. You have questions about episodes of Ancient Aliens that I haven't seen yet, so I'm just going to have to relay these. But for right now, we're going to take about a 10-minute break. I want to thank everybody who's joined us for the first hour. You've been listening to Through the Keyhole on the Paranormal Radio Network and on UPRN 105.7 FM in New Orleans. My guest this evening is Georgios Tsolakis. Most of you know him from his work on the History Channel series Ancient Aliens, which is now in its third season, right?
Yes, it is.
I am so excited. This is great. Okay, don't go too far, everybody. We will be right back.
I really liked it. Thought that's a really beautiful name. Sat down. About 10 minutes later, wrote Rhiannon. We think that she was, in fact, Queen and that her memory became the myth, I definitely feel that there's a presence in
From
everyone. We're back, and you're listening to Through the Keyhole on the Paranormal Radio Network and also on UPRN 105.7 FM in New Orleans. I'm your host, Karen Dolan, and my guest this evening is Georgios Tsolakis of the History Channel's Ancient Aliens series. That's not the only thing you've done, Giorgio. I hate saying that because it sounds like, that's it. You've also been working with Legendary Times magazine for many years. I don't even know how many. But that's a pretty amazing publication in itself. Right now, most of our listeners are pretty excited because they've seen you on Ancient Aliens, and everybody loves the show. There was one comment in the first hour. We were talking about the next generation, and somebody said, hey, my 6-year-old always wants to stay up to watch that show. He will not go to bed until he sees it, which I thought was pretty cool.
I think that's awesome. And you know what? I mean, exactly. Right there, that's what I'm talking about, that there are people out there, kids, that are totally into this. And, I mean, it's so beautiful because it's basically, because what this Ancient Aliens is about is the combination of Star Wars with Indiana Jones. And who cannot love that combination? I mean, it's science fiction that is based in science fact. And it's a combination of the two. And yeah, that's awesome that that kid watches that show, and he refuses to go to bed. Mom, you should let him watch it every single time. That's the one show he should be able to stay up late for.
Absolutely. I mean, and clearly the parents are encouraging this. If how would a 6-year-old know about this unless these parents are doing what actually I do with my kids? I'm like, I call them in. Hey, come on, it's time. Get in here.
Yeah.
And it's fantastic. It really opens up your mind to the idea. I mean, you see all over the world, as you were mentioning, that the photography is just really phenomenal. That you can see all these different areas of the world, and it's just beautiful. It's just physically beautiful. Whatever you may think about what the topic is being discussed, what people are saying about Ancient Aliens. I know there are people who say, oh, I don't know about that alien stuff. But, gosh, even if you don't care for that, watch the show just because it's just beautiful. I mean,
yeah, and it raises some interesting questions. And if those questions are uncomfortable, you know what? That's a good thing because, life, that's what life is all about. It's, to rise up to the next challenge, to rise up and, explore stuff and not just, take everything for face value and just, okay. Well, I mean, we should just stop being this society that everything that we're presented with, we're just, nodding. We're just nodding, yes, okay, and when nobody asks any questions anymore. I mean, that's just crazy.
Well, Ancient Aliens really is a good corrective to that because honestly, I watched that, and, okay, I'm familiar with the idea of the pyramids. Yes, they're huge. Oh, my God, how could we humans have moved big blocks like that? And the ideas of Atlantis. Okay, there was this ancient culture that disappeared. Okay, fine, everybody's heard of Atlantis. But, I mean, in one episode, you might talk about those two and also 6 or 7 other sites that I'd never heard of before. And they're all along the same lines, and there's just as much evidence for all of these other sites. And it is absolutely just amazing. I mean, there was another submerged city off the coast of India, and I'm trying to remember the name of it. I'm sorry, Dwarka, was it?
Yes.
Okay. I had never heard of that, ever, until I saw it on Ancient Aliens. And that sort of thing is just, how can you, as a viewer, watch this and say, oh, there's no such thing, there's nothing to any of this, it's all stuff that somebody made up. When you and your team are finding these things and you're presenting evidence for these mysterious phenomena all over the world, you're finding these ruins. It's not just one thing, it's not just the pyramids. There are people say, oh, well, it's one thing, somebody did this one really amazing thing one time. Well, no, they didn't. It happened all over the world.
Right.
And it wasn't
No.
just at one time.
No, you're absolutely correct. It doesn't matter, what place all around the planet you look at, what ancient culture, they all speak of the same. And if you look at your ancient the creation stories, they're virtually identical. And if you have a creation story that comes from Scandinavia, or you have or you have a creation story from the very southern tip of South America, and they're identical, well, then, that's a bit strange to me. And to attribute everything to fantasy and the imagination, I have to do some of my psychologist and psychiatrist friends and colleagues who are who agree that nothing comes out of nothing. So yes, of course, today, all of our kids, all of our, all human beings that live on this planet, we have an amazing, imagination, but we have thousands of years of previous quote-unquote imagination that we base our knowledge on. But to suggest that that same knowledge was in existence 10,000 years ago, psychologically speaking, is 100% incorrect. So to say that our ancestors out of nothing were able to talk about or create or come up with the ideas of flying shields that descended from the sky, or cosmic eggs made out of silver, iron, or metal that were gleaming in the sky and things like that, that all came out of thin air, psychologists have pretty much proven that is something possible. In the past, not today. People can come up with stuff today at any point because we have so many external stimuli that we can draw from, but those stimuli did not exist 10,000 years ago, and any argument to the opposite is completely ridiculous. But let's answer questions from the people in the chat rooms. They've been patient, so let's go to them.
Okay, here's one. One listener says, "What does Giorgio think about 2012 and the Mayan calendar? The world going to end? The aliens coming back?" I couldn't watch
neither. Neither. The only thing that we have to worry about in 2012, or the 21st of December 2012, is what a massive hangover we'll all have on the 22nd of December. That's pretty much it. 2012 is nothing else but Y2K 2.0. It's complete nonsense. The Mayans never said, nor did they ever suggest that the world will end in 2012. Pretty much the only thing that will happen is that one period of time will end and a new period of time will begin. And so it's to me very disconcerting nonsense there is out there, especially within our own field, of people, spreading this idiotic doom and gloom message about the apocalypse and the end of days and Judgment Day and all that, all that crap. And people fall for it. Honest, sincere people fall for it, and they're, fearing for their lives when you shouldn't. Absolutely nothing will happen. It's complete. It's total and utter nonsense, the whole 2012 question. So don't worry, everything will be fine, and it won't even get bumpy. Don't even worry. Hello. Okay. I cannot hear anyone at the moment, so... Yes.
Hey. Somehow I lost my phone connection. I could hear you on my computer screen, but I could not couldn't talk to you.
Okay, so now I also hear a phone ringing. Do you hear that too?
Yeah. Too. I don't know why. Okay. I think the aliens are joining us tonight. I don't know.
Please leave.
Okay. Okay, Georgia, are you here? No, I can't hear. Let me try turning them. Nope. Okay, you know what? I think we're going to need to take another quick break while we get these phone lines sorted out. Stick with us, everybody. We are having a fantastic conversation with Georgios Tsolakis, and we had a break, we came back, and all of a sudden the phones are jumping. I don't know what's going on here. Let us take about 2 minutes. We'll get this sorted out. We will be right back. You're listening to Through the Keyhole on Paranormal Radio Network. Hang in there.
You know, Ellen, I love that a great show like this can help such an important cause.
And it just keeps getting better, Wayne. Performing together for the very first time, here are the Dixie Chicks and their very special guest, Stevie Nicks.
Okay, are we back on? Yes. Okay, cool. All right, thanks for hanging with us, everybody. And once again, for the benefit of those who have just joined us, because I see a few more people in the chat room, you're listening to the second hour of Through the Keyhole on the Paranormal Radio Network and also on UPRN 105.7 FM in New Orleans. My guest this evening is Georgios Tsolakis, and we've been talking about his work on the History Channel series Ancient Aliens. Giorgio, I'm so sorry that I kind of cut out right in the middle of your answering that last comment. And we were talking about the Mayan calendar in 2012, and you were saying that you don't believe that the world is going to end in 2012?
Yes, absolutely, and we've just had proof of that nothing will happen, because that was the confirmation given by the ETs. That's why they interfered with our signal, to make sure that we definitely get the point that nothing will happen.
Cool. Well, all right. That's the most encouraging thing out 20 years. So I've been getting kind of nervous. I don't really believe in the whole world-ending thing, but I do get nervous as we get closer and closer to it. Okay, I have a lot of questions on the chat room, and we lost some time with the technical problems, so I'm going to try to just jump back in here and get into some more of them. One of our listeners actually asked quite a while ago, what are your thoughts on reincarnation?
Reincarnation is something that I subscribe to 100%. Because, our souls are energy, and as we all know, energy does not die. So in one shape or form, we will definitely move on after we die. The only thing that I find quite bizarre is when, let's say, the Dalai Lama or any people that do subscribe to reincarnation, what I find bizarre is that when they talk about it and when they talk that, after we die we're reincarnated or born in somebody else's body and things, that apparently it only applies to planet Earth. Now that to me is an extremely limited way of thinking. Yes, I subscribe to reincarnation, but the reincarnation applies to the entire universe, not just our galaxy. I mean, it's not like, somebody's up there and decides, okay, well, this soul goes back into this, in this galaxy right here. I mean, that's not, this is not how it works. So, it's definitely something where, our souls or our essences, they're timeless, and so we have come back. We will come back for billions of years, and some people, that's how we know that some people are old souls, as you call them, and some people are not so old souls. And I think there's a true meaning behind that. And yes, I subscribe to reincarnation 100%, but as it applies to the entire universe. And not just to Earth. I mean, it's just a bit. I cannot wrap my head around anyone suggesting that reincarnation, after you die, you come back as an ant here on Earth. You might come back as an ant, but it can be on any planet throughout the entire universe. So, it's also everything is too simplified. Let's turn on our brains. It's okay if there is smoke coming out of your ears. That's what makes life living. Not everything has to be presented on a silver platter. Not everything has to be, not everything has an answer. It's good to ask questions and in the end be like, well, I don't know. Well, guess what? That's perfect. Not everything needs to be known, and there are no answers for everything.
Didn't someone say that saying "I don't know" is the beginning of wisdom?
Yes, or Socrates, or Socrates saying, "I know that I know nothing." And that is absolutely true. And the moment, especially in this field, the moment you hear someone or watch someone or go to somebody's lecture or buy somebody's book or whatever, the moment one of those people claim that they know the answer to all the questions in the universe, run for the hills. Run as fast as you can, because no one has all the answers. No one. And people who claim that they do are nothing else but charlatans.
I am so glad to hear you say that, because I've had so many people listen to my show. Oh, she's so gullible, because she'll say, well, maybe, what do I know? Truth is, people come and talk to me about things that they've been researching sometimes for their whole life. And I know nothing about it until I talk to them about it on the air. And I cannot believe that anyone would think I would be so arrogant as to tell someone, no, I've never looked into this until right now, and I know more about it than you do after 20 years of research. I'm not going to tell somebody they're wrong. I don't know. I'm willing to accept the fact that maybe I'm wrong. Maybe I have a lot to learn about the world. And I don't think that everything everyone tells me is automatically accurate. I don't accept everything, but I don't automatically reject it either. And I think that's kind of what you're talking about, is you have to meet the world with an open mind. There's a lot out there that we don't know about. And that's what's so much fun, you know?
Right, exactly. No, and it truly is. So you have to approach this subject matter, this whole thing, with a very open mind and with a humorous attitude, because if you're too serious about this, believe me, my hair would be gray and it would possibly be gone. And as you know, it isn't.
And that would be bad for your hair's Facebook page. I'm sorry. I was trying to think, how am I going to work that in? I thought that was...
Well, you just did, so that's good.
You're the only person I know. You're possibly the only man in the world whose hair has its own Facebook page. That is so cool.
No. Me and John Stamos, but he's a fellow Greek, so we're from the same. So what can we do? You know, we are Greek. We're blessed with good hair. What are you going to do?
You have great hair. I would absolutely. I can totally see why you wear it long. It's fabulous. Okay.
Thank you.
All right. All right. We still have a lot of questions, and thank you to all my listeners again for posting all these really great questions. I'm doing my best to get through them here. One quick comment. One person said, "Could you please, in future episodes, leave the place names up longer on the screen? People are trying to write them down, and they're not always able to catch it." Here's a really good question. This person would like to hear about your thoughts on how ETs may have influenced religion. And she says, "I started that paper on how Abraham was led into Judaism by voices he would hear, supposedly God, and we know it was ET. Also, why would ET allow the two different nations to be born, and why through Abraham's offspring? What does he think? What do you, Georgio, think about that?"
Well, it's not necessarily that aliens influenced a religion.
Except like the cargo cult you were talking about, where
well, yes, but the idea is that the reason why we have religion, today, is because of aliens that visit, flesh and blood extraterrestrials who visited us in the past. At the time, religion as such that we know of as today did not exist. Our ancestors thought that these beings descending from the sky were gods, or that they were divine or had magical powers, which they never did. So, the big three religions today, especially Christianity, Judaism, and Islam, are based on one big misunderstanding. They're all based on a misunderstood visit by flesh and blood extraterrestrials who came to Earth thousands and thousands of years ago, and then over time these events were turned into something that they never were to begin with, meaning that the only reason why we actually have religion today is because of a complete misunderstanding of true and physical events that happened thousands of years ago. Now, did the extraterrestrials side with certain cultures and fight or make sure that another side of another culture would lose in a battle and things like that? Absolutely, because that's what we can read about in the ancient texts. And that is exactly another point that proves that whoever or whatever visited us in the past was not God, but some type of an extraterrestrial who took sides. Because God, in my opinion, God, it's not a personal thing. It's not where God all of a sudden decides, oh yeah, I'm going to go with this guy instead of that guy, and screw the... That's not very godly behavior if you look at it from, an altruistic or a true definition of God. So whatever was described, or whoever was described in the Old Testament, wasn't God. It was turned into, or people thought it was God, but that creed not, and which goes right into the next question. Then is, well, okay, Giorgio, then does that mean you're an atheist? Of course not. The one has nothing to do with the other. To suggest, just because I say that whoever or whatever was described in the Old Testament wasn't God, that does not mean that I can't believe in a God. But God is something completely different. See, when the religionists, they always say, well, even Einstein said that he's in God, and so that therefore we know that God exists, and if a smart guy like Einstein says that God exists, then it really has to be true, and blah blah blah. Well, that's only half of the story, because when in the 20s or the 30s, when Einstein was asked by this journalist, "Do you believe in God?" Einstein ultimately did say yes, but the story that happened in between is completely left out, and anyone can go and read up on this. Immediately after Einstein was asked, "Do you believe in God?" Einstein replied by asking the journalist, "Well, that depends on what your definition is, what your definition of God is." And then the journalist said, "Well, whatever, the God from the Old Testament." And then Einstein said, "Well, if that is your definition of God, then I do not believe in God, and I disagree with you. But if your definition is like mine," meaning Einstein, that there is some type of a force in the universe that is like that there's a pattern to everything, that the universe is or nature is God, then yes, I totally believe in God, and that is what I'm referring to, that there is some type of an all-encompassing force, that we all belong to the same force field, whatever it is, but it has no quote-unquote effect on us. It's when we sit and we pray, it is a fortification of ourselves. It comes from deep within, and we are connected to this force out in the universe, yes, but, to suggest that someone or something made a conscious choice to help you out, it does not compute in my face. I mean, in my head. It is our own thing that we did within our own hearts. God resides in all of our hearts, and if you want to go to church to pray, fine, but you can sit on your toilet and pray. It'll have the same effect. So, it's all very interesting to see what we have done with religion today, and quite honestly, all the teachings of Jesus and stuff like that. I mean, if Jesus were to come back today, which, by the way, he never, ever, ever will, Jesus would die a very sad man, and they would all slam the door in his face, saying he is not Jesus. But that's a different story.
I have to feel he would be a bit disappointed if he came back today.
Oh,
however.
Beyond.
Yeah.
Beyond.
Okay, moving from religion, there's another question. Many of us out here believe that our government has been in touch with extraterrestrials since the 1930s. What do you think about this topic?
Why? My question is why is everyone so fixated in the 1930s? And that's all I'm going to say.
I don't know. I was just trying to think, what is it about the 1930s? Because I thought everyone was hyped about 1947, about the Roswell crash. I mean, and the whole topic of your work is ancient aliens. Like it happened a long time before 1930. But what do you think about the idea that our government has actually been in touch with these other beings? Do you think that's really happening?
It is possible, but personally, I have no proof of that. And like you said, I specialize in ancient aliens that existed at least 1,000, 2,000 years ago. So I am not familiar with research that goes on in modern ufology, but I have heard stuff and stories, and obviously have read at least one of your wonderful husband's books, Richard, and so is it possible that the government is in contact with extraterrestrials? Yes, absolutely. Do I know that for a fact? Absolutely not. So, like we established earlier, an open mind. Would it surprise me? Of course not. So, yeah. I mean, I don't know. I mean, I'm, and quite honestly, I don't care. I mean, it's, what are you going to do about it? There's nothing you can do.
Well, that's true. It kind of ties into another question that several people have brought up on the chat room, and that's if ancient aliens were visiting us, if extraterrestrials were visiting Earth in ancient times and they were interacting with humans, clearly, they weren't trying to keep their presence secret if they were building these enormous, stone structures here that are still standing. Do you believe that they're still visiting us today?
Sure. Yeah. I mean, ancient aliens doesn't preclude. Look, there's no question that in my mind I'm convinced that, Earth was in fact visited by flesh and blood extraterrestrials in the remote past. There's no question in my mind. I don't believe in it. I know it. Because the moment you invoke the word believe, it has sort of a religious connotation that involves, I have no faith in aliens. I have no faith in my ideas and in my philosophies. There's no belief involved at all. I'm convinced. I know the facts. I've read the texts. I've put the dots together, and but the question whether or not we're still being visited today is yes, and that is it the same ETs that were here 5,000 years ago? I don't know. But have these visitations persisted, or have they been continual? And the answer is yes, because there are, of course, there are incredible, many stories from 5,000 to 8,000 years ago. But throughout the Middle Ages, there are stories of bizarre sightings that have been recorded. So, to suggest that only ancient aliens existed thousands of years ago, and then, we have the Roswell crash as the next extraterrestrial visit, that's complete buffoonery, because things happened in the middle of that, or in the intermediary period as well. And so, yeah, it definitely is there's definitely a bridge between the ancient world and the modern world, for sure. And, of course, in everything in between. So it was never a complete, we were never completely alone. Now, the question, of course, to surmise here what the person was getting at or wanted to know is, how come that the visits or the visitations aren't as public or as official today as they were, let's say, 5,000 years ago, is the fact that today, if an extraterrestrial craft would hover above Los Angeles, we would immediately know, oh, wow, it's a UFO, it's an extraterrestrial craft. Now, 5,000 years ago, when the same thing happened, it was like, wow, it's the gods, divine being, God has arrived, which they never did. It was just, people, spillers that, took advantage of the fact that our ancestors thought that they were gods, and they never were. They totally played along, and they knew that they were being worshipped. And today, that won't happen. If a craft shows up today and parks itself over Paris or over New York City or whatnot, well, it's clear. It's not God. It's extraterrestrials. So therein lies the difference.
Yeah. I would think there are some groups that probably still would say, I don't believe in aliens, or, there are many groups that say aliens are not extraterrestrials, those beings are actually demons. We were talking about that earlier.
Right, but that's their problem, and that's their problem, and they're clearly not thinking correctly. They're clearly not thinking correctly if they see a shuttlecraft from that spaceship that parks itself in our orbit, or above the city of New Orleans or whatnot in the thing, and then someone emerges from that shuttlecraft that, in my opinion, looks very similar like us, to suggest that that person is a demon. Well, they're dimwits, nothing else. I'm sorry, I cannot handle such. I simply have a hard time, handling such nonsense, because. The other crazy theory that I was approached with the other day, they're like, oh yeah, they're here to harvest our souls, man, because extraterrestrials, if they exist, they don't have souls, and that's why they come here, because they weren't visited, or Jesus didn't, they don't consider Jesus as their savior. I mean, you cannot. You can't engage with those people. I mean, they're too far gone. They're too far gone.
Well, it's like the people who say, no doctors or scientists believe in UFOs.
Which, as you know, is also completely untrue. In fact, many doctors are and lawyers and attorneys and stuff like that. They're on my subscribers list for Legendary Times. I mean, but again, arguments like that, they're completely invalid. And if someone throws those arguments at you, don't even engage them, because there is nothing that you can say to change their minds. So, whatever.
Well, Giorgio, I just wanted to mention, I know some of these questions must feel to you a little bit like, what are you asking me for? Especially, for example, the one about modern government's contact with extraterrestrials, when, we know that your field of expertise is ancient aliens, but I know you've come across this in the years that you've been doing this, and I've seen it too. I've had people come up to me, and people feel like, well, you have spent all these years researching aliens and all of these out there topics, really, that many people never get a chance to delve into as deeply as you do. And so they're kind of wondering, well, in the course of doing your research on ancient aliens for this show, come across anything that might indicate that perhaps this contact is still going on, or have you formed any personal opinions about things that maybe hadn't come up in the show because they're not really part of that topic?
No, not really, and I really don't concern myself with it, because I am of the firm conviction that if and when official extraterrestrial contact takes place in this day and age, and I think we're about, I don't know, it's definitely going to happen within the next 100 years, if we get our act together as human beings, then it will be a positive thing. Extraterrestrials will not come here to attack us. They will not come here to annihilate us. They will not come here to eat us for dessert. I mean, those are all idiotic doom and gloom scenarios that have been proposed by other UFO researchers and gurus and numbnuts like that, where the only idea is to sell a book or to sell a crazy story to some TV show. Because the bottom line is that if extraterrestrials wanted to come here to destroy us, why did they wait for 10,000 years again? Why did they wait until we have nuclear weapons? Why did they wait till we are more intelligent and things like this? Well, I'll tell you why they waited. And why they will never attack us, because according to the ancient astronaut theory, we are a product of them. So for them to all of a sudden just then come here and pull the plug after 250,000 years it's completely, I cannot even imagine that, because we can prove through our evolutionary process that there have been at least 2 times in our human history where we should have not survived. Our genetic, it's called the genetic bottleneck theory, or the genetic bottleneck effect, where if a certain number of a population drops drops below a certain number, then it is genetically guaranteed that these will die out. And anthropologists and geneticists have determined that humankind, our human race, has gone through 2 of those scenarios, and we survived. And this is something that our geneticists to this day cannot figure out how that is even possible. Well, the answer that I propose is that we had help from outside, that somebody guaranteed our survival. And that guarantee for our survival has continued till today. Because, come on, Karen, you know this. You look around us. We, by and large, are a very stupid society. It doesn't matter what continent you are on. We are just a mess, we human beings. So, there is no way that we came all the way to 2011 without the direct guarantee for our survival by extraterrestrials. So, this whole thing that, you know, we will be eradicated and you know, it's complete nonsense. It really is.
Yeah, I think that's mostly because we as human beings tend to automatically fear what we don't understand. And so the people who are more likely to say, oh my gosh, they're here to eat us or they're going to destroy us, are the ones who know the least about the whole phenomenon.
And we hold ourselves in such high esteem. And you know, sorry to break it to you, but nobody really cares what happens on Earth. And that's why, you know, because the other thing, you know, last year with the oil spill or earlier this year, you know, it's like, oh, how come the aliens are not swooping down and take care of the oil spill? Well, you know why? Because we caused it. So why should they help us? I mean, what is this? We know how to power a car with water. Why do water cars not exist? It's not because of aliens. It's because of the oil companies and the governments and everything else who are not controlled by aliens, not controlled by reptilians and all that nonsense. It's us human beings who have brought us into this horrific state that we're in right now, and it's going to be human beings who will lead us out of this mess as well. It's not going to be aliens, and please don't hope for aliens to swoop from the sky and solve problems for us, because, I mean, that's just wishful thinking too.
Well, what about all of the contactees and all of the abductees who have told their stories for decades about being contacted and being told by these extraterrestrials, we needed to get in touch with you because your environment is in danger and you need to do something about it. I mean, that really has given people the impression that, you know, ETs are watching the Earth and they're concerned about the fact that we're messing it up.
Of course.
And I've always wondered, well, if they were so concerned about it 40 years ago, why haven't they stepped in and cleaned it up yet? You know, because clearly we're not doing it.
Well, no, because look, all of us, it doesn't matter where you live, who you are, what you do or whatnot, we all know right from wrong. To suggest that, you know, some dude who is in a gang, who you know, and participates in criminal activity, you know, for a person like that, to say that they don't know what they're doing is wrong, and psychologists and psychiatrists have proven this, is incorrect. Of course they know what's wrong. We all know what's right and wrong. And so if all of us would do the right thing, this planet could be turned around very, very quickly. It's just a matter of choice. It's just a matter of you know, who we are as a species, and but nobody cares anymore. That was my point earlier. It's just, you know, nobody puts an effort into life anymore, and everyone just clamors that they're entitled for this, they're entitled for that, and the answer is nobody is entitled to anything, nothing. You just have to go out there and and do it on your own, man. If you just sit there and wait, it's over. You're done. And that applies to the whole planet.
Get up off the couch and grab life by the horns and take responsibility for our own actions and taking care of our own planet. Excellent. Well, Georgio, thank you so much. We actually have run out of time. That second hour went by in it felt like 5 minutes.
Yes, and we have to do this again.
Joining me. Absolutely, anytime.
You got it.
We have just had a blast, and we barely scratched the surface of all the questions and comments that were coming through the chat room. This was an incredibly engaging conversation. And also, I have to say, I'm in my 5th year doing this show, and I have never seen so many people in the chat room at one time. So we got
wonderful. I'm glad.
Thank you. This was just phenomenal. It was an absolute pleasure talking with you, and I would love to do this again anytime you're up for it. And,
you got it. Thank you very much, Karen. Appreciate it. And say hello to Richard for me.
I will. And thanks to all our listeners, everyone who joined us this evening. You've been listening to a live broadcast of Through the Keyhole here on the Paranormal Radio Network and UPRN 105.7 FM in New Orleans. Archives are available on the Black Vault Radio Network at media.theblackvault.com. I'm your host, Karen Dolan, and I just want to thank my guest, Georgios Tsolakis, one more time. And to everyone listening, stay tuned now for Global Focus coming up next with Trace Sheridan. Thanks, everyone. See you next week.